Okay, so welcome to this video, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be talking about the command line, what it is and how to be using it. And the major reason I want to do this now is so we talk about file paths, which is very important, and I also want us to be familiar with using the terminal to create files and doing basic things. We're not going to do anything special. You can do some further learning. I will put some resources in the link below where you can go and read to learn more about this and look at other commands that you might be interested in. But I'm only going to be covering the absolutely basic ones that every developer is going to use. You might use other ones, but these ones you are definitely going to use them. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So what is the command line? The command line or the terminal, depending on what platform you're on, is a text-based interface that allows you to interact with your computer using commands. So now there are two ways that we typically interact with the computer: using the graphical user interface GUI or using the command line. So if you don't know what the graphical user interface, if you've ever heard the word GUI, it's basically just like when you click create a file, you name the file, you hit enter, and now you have a new file, right? You want to delete a file, you right click, you move it to trash, you've deleted the file. So that's using the GUI. To use the command line on Windows, you go to your search bar and hit CMD. This brings up a command line tool called CMD, which is the one that has been on Windows forever. There's a newer version of it that is also pre-installed on Windows called PowerShell. Both of them are, I think Windows is trying to replace CMD with PowerShell. You can also have third-party command lines or terminals. On Mac, it comes pre-installed. You get this one called Terminal. I also have this one that I installed called Hyper. I got this one off the internet. While I was on Windows, I was using a command line tool called Terminal, which was made by Microsoft. You can get that one from the Microsoft Store if you want it. But we are going to be using this basic one, the default one on Mac here. So you don't go to look for anything. Anyways, on Windows, you search CMD and you hit enter. Use that one. You can use PowerShell if you want to, but don't use. Even if you use the third party one, it's still going to be the same thing. But it doesn't matter what you're using on Windows. Um, just You could also forget about that for now. Now, some codes, some commands are the same on Windows or on Mac. Some differ, and I will be pointing them out. Like when I hit one that is different on Windows, I will tell you, oh, on Windows it's a little bit different, and this is how you do it. So the first one, which is very important, that I think we should even know because this one helps us see things better, is to list the directory, or basically the list the files that are currently where you are. So let me explain something real quick. Let's first look at this. So ls on Windows, type dir, right? On Mac or Linux, you say ls and you hit enter, and this shows you where you are. Now by default, I have this open right here to explain to you. When you open the terminal or when you open CMD command prompt on Windows, it starts at the root directory. You can now move one step forward, move another step forward, move another step forward, and then you get to the desktop. I don't think you'll see anything in between here. So most Windows device, I think if you bought it brand new and set it up yourself, you should all have C and then maybe desktop, right? That's how it should be. I think so. But anyways, using CD helps you. We'll talk about what CD is. But I want to mention something real quick. Notice here on Windows it has backslashes, right? On Mac uses front slashes. I think Linux is, because Mac and Linux are pretty much the same. When it comes to like terminal stuff, I think maybe Linux should also be front slashes. But if you're on Linux, you're most likely going to know how to do this. But you've seen it before, anyways. So now let me show you something. So now we want to change directory. Change directory just is like moving from one place to another. Let me show you something. So now using the GUI, let's say we are on this folder called one, and inside the one we have, let's just call it I, right? So to move from one directory to another, you click on one, you're on one now. You can click and you're in this folder called I. Using the command line or terminal, you say cd and then the name of the file you want to go into. So now let's say I want to go into this I want to go to my desktop, and you should know that these aren't case sensitive for doing this. If you say case sensitive is when AS and AAS are not the same thing. They both work, although it does one funny thing where how you spell the desktop is how it shows you this, but you see what I mean now. So let's say we go cd and we want to go to the desktop. We are currently at the desktop. You can see it this way. On Windows, if you move to the desktop, this means now you are at the desktop. The last thing, or the last thing here is where you are currently at, and that's something that Windows does that Mac doesn't do. It lists how far you are from the root directory depending on, you are basically transversing your hard drive. So files inside of file, that's basically it. So everything is in the root file, the user is in the root file, and wiki is inside the user, and the desktop is inside wiki. So your desktop is this window here. Everything here, this is the desktop. So now let me bring this back. So now on the desktop we can say dir on Windows. On Mac we say ls, and it shows us everything that's on our desktop. We have test, we have 1, we have 2. Check this out. We have 1, we have test, we have 2. We can also cd into 1. What does this mean? It means change directory and change from the desktop to 1. It's the same thing on Windows too. We hit enter, we are currently in 1, and we know we are in 1 because if we say ls or dir or Windows, we see this folder. And if I create another folder, I'm not giving it a name, and we say ls again, now we are seeing untitled folder. We could create another one and say, sorry, you already gave it a different name. We say ls, we see I untitled folder 2, I untitled folder 2. So that's how you, now we've talked about changing directory, we talk about listing the files in the directory. How do we go back now? Because on your GUI, let's say we are in I, we could click this button to go back. Right? Click this button to go front. How do we do this using the command line? Well, the same way we said cd to change directory. Now when we say change directory, we say the name of the file we want to change directory to. But when we say cd dot dot, this means go back one step. When we get to HTML and CSS, we're going to be doing things like this, and then a name slash, and this is why it's important to understand file paths. We are going to get there, you will see it again, but now we are in the terminal. So let's say if we say ls, we see where we are. We say cd dot dot, goes back one step. Now we are in desktop. Another thing you should know is using the arrow keys, it shows you, or you are able to re-input commands you've used before. So now this means there's nothing here. If I hit the arrow up key, it shows me the last command I used, and which is this. Up, it was the last command I used, which is what? ls. You see it here. Up again, it should be ls. Up again should be ls. Up again should be ls. Up again should be cd1. Right? And see? Check it out. See? You see? You see? So now that way you don't have to like rewrite something you've already written before. If you've written before, just go up, and or even if you make a mistake, for instance, which is another way you could, let's say you say cd where are we currently? Let me see, ls. Okay, let's say I say cd on does not exist, so it tells me no such file or directory, right? So if I go up one step, I can now say put the e there and hit enter, and now I'm in 1 because 1 exists, right? And ls, I can see all the folders that are in 1, right? Okay, so that's that. You're not limited to going one step forward, one step backwards. So now we are currently at 1. We can see the back. We are back at the desktop, right? And now let's say we want to go into 1. And when we get to 1, we want to go into I. Let me create a file called we are in I, right? we're not limited to go one step forward. We could just skip and say cd 1 forward slash I. Means go to 1 and then go to I that is inside of 1. Same way it is here. Let's say you are at users, you say go to wikihelp backslash desktop. Now you see here we use forward slash. If we're on Windows, we have to use backward slash because that's how Windows lists its files. So now we say go to wikihelp, go to desktop, right? Go to 1, go to I. Hit enter. We are now in I. You can see it here. And if we do ls, we see the file we created inside of I called we are in I, which is this one, right? So now we want to delete this file. Let me make a duplicate real quick. Now using the GUI, we can right click and say move to trash and it is deleted, right? How do we do this using this in the command line? Well, I'm just going to be calling it terminal for now, but it's the same thing. I'm tired of having to mention the both of them. So now using the terminal, how do we get rid of this file? Well, it's a little bit different depending on what platform you're on. On Windows, you say del, and then you name the file, which is and I'm going to show you something real quick. In I. Now, it is not a smart idea to create file names with these spaces. Don't do it. Instead, if you have to, it's better you name it something like we are in 1. It's better because now all of this is one word, and I'll show you why we do that. But before I do that, let me first explain something. So now we are in I. Right, let me create another folder called test. Now, so now if you say del we are in 1, this means delete a folder called we are in 1. That's what it's supposed to mean, but because of this space it does not work. Do you know why? Command not sorry on Mac, sorry, you use rm. Let me go up one step. That was I used the Windows command, and that's why it did not work. rm, this is what you use on Mac, and say we are in 1. This does not work. Do you know why? Because of these spaces. So now what your terminal is seeing, it's saying delete b, delete r, delete I. It's looking at this as 3 different files. The only way we could delete this file that has space in between it is if we put it in quotation mark. So now we are saying this is one word. Delete we are. This is the one wrong. We are in I. Now that it's in quotation mark, we can actually delete it. So on Windows you say del and del and then you put it in quotation mark because of the spaces in between the name. And if we hit enter, the del, the rm command is for deleting files, not folder. I haven't talked about creating files. So to delete a folder, you say to delete a folder on Windows, you say rm dir. Sorry for that mistake. Dir, and then let me go back up. dir. That's on Windows to delete this. So everything I've said is still true, but the rm part was a mistake. That's what you do to delete files. I made it, and I haven't showed you how to create files, and that's what we're going to talk about right next. So this is the command on Windows to delete a folder, and on Mac to delete a folder you say rm-r, and now if we hit enter, it deletes the folder for us. So let's talk about creating file real quick. So on Mac, to create a file you say touch, right, and then the name of the file you want to create. Let's say 1, and now we have 1. On Windows you can right click and you see create a file. You see the multiple options. On Mac does not give you those options for some reason, or maybe I just don't know how to turn that thing on. But on Windows, to create a file you say what, the type, you said LONUL, null, and then you said greater dan sign, and then the name of the file, which is let's say which is one, for instance. So this is type null greater than sign one. This creates a file called one for you. On Mac and on Linux, you just say touch and then the name of the file. We already have that, so it did not create anything again. So that's how you do that. And then to remove the file, to delete the file, we say on Mac we say rm1. On Windows we say what? del. So this rm will be del on Windows. Okay, so rm1, his enter, one has been deleted. That's how I create a file. That's on Mac and on Windows. Also, another command we should know, we've talked about the change directory, we talked about the list directory, which is dir or the ls. We've talked about delete, we've talked about remove a directory. We've not talked about making a directory. So we want to make a folder now. We say mkdir. This one is the same on Mac and on Windows. If we say this and we say this, you see one has been created. We can now use that code. Where is it? We can now use, I can't even find it. We can now use okay, sorry, rm, I was looking for the Windows one, and then one, and then we delete that. So that's the basic code. This another one is called to, let me create a file. This one you're probably not going to use it that much, but you can use it. It's to copy a file, and there are lots of them. Depending on who you are and what you're doing, actually determines what you're going to be using. But this one, to change directory, to delete, to make a file, those are the most common ones that you're actually going to be using. So now what was I even talking about? So this one, we've created one. Let's say we want to make a copy of one. We can say on Mac we say cp, on Windows we say copy actually. So we say cp1, and then when we copy, this means copy everything inside of one and put it in a new file. What do we call the file? Let's call it 2. So now if there was anything inside of one, it will be copied and put into 2. So let's say we create a file, touch one. We can now, we are creating, we're not giving it a type of file. Let's say 1.txt, which is actually a mistake I've been making. These aren't anything. So now this is a text file. Anything, if we have now copied this code will now copy everything in text file and put it into this. So let's say we want to create a HTML file, which is what you're actually going to be doing. You can say 1.html, for instance, and now we've created a HTML file called 1. And then you go up one step, and then you say touch one.css, for instance, and then we've created a CSS file. You can say 1.js, .js, and now we've created a JavaScript file, right? On Windows, you're going to be saying type null. It might seem like it's a lot right now, but the more you get better at typing, you are not even going to be thinking about these things, because that's what I was doing all the time when I was on Windows. And you don't have to be typing multiple times. If you hit it one time, you can just go up. Did that just work? Apparently you could. I did not know that. I did not know you could use this code on Mac OS also. Okay, let me see. It seems that also works on. Oh wow. Okay, so apparently you can use this same code on Mac OS. I did not know that. But on Windows, this is how you create it. There are other ways of also creating files on Windows. Instead of using this code, you could easily just Google it yourself and see. So that's one way. I think maybe I will be using this code when we go further, so it should just be the same with Mac and Windows. We've talked about copying. Is there any other thing I want to mention? No. So change directory, list directory, copy, delete, remove directory, and then copy paste. I think that's the basic one we did. Like I said, I did not want to go that deep into it. I just want to use the basic one and explain file paths for you so you could get it. And in the future, as we progress, we are going to be seeing some of these things in action. So I don't want it to be strange. I want to kind of introduce you to it and kind of make you get your hands a little bit dirty by doing some of these things. So it's not saying in case you've never used the terminal before. So this is kind of like an introductory to it. We are going to be using it, especially once when we start. Even for HTML, I'm going to be using it because we are going to be pushing to GitHub, which is another thing we are going to be learning, and the basics of GitHub, and we are going to also be doing it in the terminal. So now you kind of have an idea of what the terminal is like, and you've probably, hopefully, done a bit of this. And we're going to, let me clear this terminal now. Hopefully, you remember what clearing is on your operating system. On Windows is CLS, on Mac is clear, and I'm sure CLS does not work on Mac. Okay, and that's it for this video, and we'll see you in the future. I'm going to be coming back to this, and I'll see you later.